What is up guys, it's Cal, and in this video we'll be taking a look at Destruction Warlocks in the Battle for Azeroth beta. In this video I'll be showing you all the baseline abilities, as well as the passives, and then the talents and PvP talents. Then I'll talk a bit about some small changes to their demon pets. And just like the rest of my overview videos, the point of this video is not to tell you which talents to pick for the best DPS, or if Destruction is better than the other two specs of DPS. This is merely to show you what's to come. So, let's get started. So here are all the baseline abilities for the Destruction Warlock. So here we have Unending Resolve, which is unchanged. Still, it has a base of 3-minute cooldown, even though I believe your artifact weapon made that less than 3 minutes, but we won't have artifact weapons anymore. So it's still a 3-minute cooldown, reduces all damage you take by 40%, and you get immunity to interrupts and silencing effects. Banish is unchanged. You can use it on a demon, apparition, elemental, and they can't do anything for 30 seconds. And then you can of course banish them again, and it gets off of them. Soulstone, not really changed. The only change to it is it will not cost any mana. Still 10-minute cooldown. You can battle arrest someone to 60 health and 20% mana. Health stones are unchanged. Still heal you for 25% health, and they have 3 charges. Create soul well, just like health stones are unchanged. You can create a soul well for your group to get health stones from. Ritual of summoning is unchanged. You can put up a lock closet and summon people to your location. Health funnel, I mean, had a slight change to it, I guess. So you sacrifice 25% of your max health to heal your summoned demon, but on live I believe that's 24%. And then here we have probably the greatest ability in beta as of right now, Rain of Fire. You might read that tooltip there. Costs 3 soul shards, calls down a rain of hellfire, dealing some fire damage over some amount of seconds to enemies in the area. You might read that and think to yourself, well, that doesn't seem changed at all. It's not, but what it does is it successfully makes everyone's computer around you go down to about 4 or 5 FPS, or even less than that. It obviously depends on what graphics card you have. The better graphics card has a higher resistance against Rain of Fire, because as you see here on the screen now, this is me in Orgrimmar. Well, as soon as I made that character, it put me into this, I don't even know how to explain it, just Rain of Fire falling down from the sky. And even better looking than that, this is Old Town. Yeah. That's, it's pretty self-explanatory there. But all jokes aside, there was a glitch with Rain of Fire at one point where when you put it down on the ground, it wouldn't go away. So you could literally just spam Rains of Fire everywhere and it would just make everyone's computer lag up. Anyways, Summon Infernal had a buff to it. Still a 3-minute cooldown. You summon an Infernal from the Twisting Nether, impacting 4 fire damage and stunning all enemies in the area for 2 seconds. That is unchanged. The Infernal will serve you for 30 seconds. On live, that's 25 seconds. So a buff to 30 seconds, dealing some damage to all nearby enemies every some amount of seconds, 1.5 seconds, and generating 1 soul shard fragment every 0.5 seconds. That last part is new to it, so it will now generate 1 soul shard fragment every 0.5 seconds. And remember, it's what, like 10 soul shard fragments for 1 soul shard. Shadow Fury here is baseline. So this used to be a talent for Demonology and Destruction. Now it's baseline. 1-minute cooldown. That's pretty much the only change to it, is its cooldown is being increased from 30 seconds to 1 minute. And the other change to it is it will stun enemies for 3 seconds, whereas on live it stuns enemies for 4 seconds. I'm actually kind of surprised that they gave this to Destruction Locks, because they're trying to like either nerf or take away everyone's AoE stuns, and they decided to just give one to Destruction Locks baseline. But it is, you know, slightly nerfed than its live iteration. Better than taking it away. Then there's Unending Breath, of course unchanged. You can put it on a friendly target. They can breathe underwater, and their swim speed is increased by 20% for 10 minutes. Demonic Gateway is unchanged. You can put down a gateway on the ground, use it, fly to the other location, and you can only use it once every 1.5 minutes. So here we have Immolate. Immolate is unchanged. You still burn the enemy for some fire damage immediately, and additional fire damage over 18 seconds as a dot. And it still has the effect of periodic damage, generating 1 soul shard fragment. It has a 50% chance to generate an additional one on critical hits. Conflagrate did have a buff to it, so it triggers an explosion on the target, dealing some fire damage, and it reduces the cast time of your next Incinerate or Chaos Bolt by 30% for 10 seconds. So that was the talent Backdraft. If you remember the talent Backdraft on live, well, that talent it's actually now a passive. So I'll show you it when I get to the passive abilities, but it's baked into Conflagrate now, and it still generates 5 soul shard fragments and still has 2 charges to it. Incinerate is unchanged. You could still use it on enemy targets. It's pretty much your filler move. generates 2 Soul Shard fragments, an additional 1 on critical strikes. Chaos Bolt is unchanged, still costs 2 Soul Shards. You send a giant Chaos Bolt that is always crits, and the more crit you have, the more damage it does. And then we have Drain Life. Drain Life had a slight nerf to it, so you still use it to generate health from the target, but it will now heal for 500% of its damage done, whereas on live it's 600%. So a slight nerf there. Havoc, its cooldown was decreased from 45 seconds to 25 seconds, and then the change to its effect is it will cause your single target spells to also strike the Havoc victim for 75% of normal initial damage, whereas on live it's just I believe it's just 100% normal damage. Enslave Demon is unchanged. You can enslave a demon to do your bidding up to 1 level above you. Fear is unchanged. You can fear a target for 20 seconds. Damage can cancel the effect. You can only fear 1 target at a time. And then here you have your demons. I'll talk about the demons in a second, but they're all there. Same thing with Command Demon. That's there. I'll talk about that more in depth when I get to the demons. And then there's Eye of Kilrog, which is unchanged. You can summon Eye of Kilrog and look around the area. And then you might notice there are a few abilities here that aren't, well, here anymore. So there's no more life tap. Mana consumption seems to be a whole lot more manageable, so you won't need to just like spam life tap to get your mana up anymore. There's no more summon Doomguard. They got rid of that. And yeah, I believe that's it. So now let's take a look at the passive abilities. So as you see here, as I mentioned before, Backdraft is a passive. Conflagrate reduces the cast time of your next Incinerate or Chaos Bolt by 30%. Used to be a talent, now a passive. And then your Mastery is unchanged, so your spells deal some amount of increased damage, plus a random amount of up to some percentage additional increased damage, and then you take less damage, plus a random amount. It's not changed at all. Soul Leech did get a nerf to it, so all your single target damage done by you and your minions grants you and your pet shadowy shields that absorb 8% of the damage dealt for 15 seconds. On live, it's 10%, and then up to 10% of maximum health on live, that's 15%. So that did get nerfed slightly. And then Soul Shards, you still have Soul Shards. They're not changed at all. So now let's take a look at the demons. There's just small changes to each of them. Let's start out with the Succubus. As you see here, when I'm summoning it, it puts up this cool looking Void Tear. I really like that. So the changes to the Succubus is that Whiplash has been changed slightly. It no longer knocks an enemy back. It will now reduce their movement speed by 50% for 10 seconds. And it can be put on auto. So before it could not be, but now it can be. And Seduction cannot be put on auto. Before it could be, now it can't be. And Seduction is the new Control Demon, or Command Demon ability. So there's that. And now let's take a look at the Fell Hunter. Another Rift Tear right there. So Spell Lock no longer costs energy, which is nice because this is kind of one of those abilities you need on the fly. So now if your Fell Hunter doesn't have energy, well, you can still use it. It's still the Command Demon ability though. And Devour Magic cannot be put on auto, in case you care about that at all. Before it could be, now it cannot be. Let's take a look at the Voidwalker, a much darker tear for him to appear from. So for the Voidwalker, let's look at his passive abilities. Here we have Shadow Shield. Shadow Shield is now a passive. This used to be an ability that you actually activated. So it encases the Voidwalker in shadowy energy, reducing physical damage taken by 40%. So he's of course still your tank. He's always been your tank since vanilla. That's not changed at all. And then Shadow Bulwark is the new Command Demon ability. So this was an ability he had before, but now it's the Command Demon ability. Temporarily increases current and maximum health by 30% for 20 seconds. That's your Voidwalker's health. Not your health, of course. This used to be Suffering, I believe. Yeah, that which was the taunt. But now it is Shadow Bulwark. So now let's take a look at the Imp, and we see a green, tiny little tear there. So the changes to the Imp. Flee can be put on auto. As you see here, I'm right-clicking it. The Imps no longer have Cauterize Master, which used to be the Command Demon ability. Now Singe Magic is the Command Demon ability. So there's that. And then one other change to the Imps, which is nice, is that they get Blood Pact again. Increases stamina by 5%. That's exciting. I think your Imp is your like most used pet. I don't know. I don't mana Warlock, I'm sorry. But yeah, in case you have your Imp out, you will get Blood Pact. So now here are the talents, and then I'll also go over PvP talents in case you care about those at all. So for the first tier, we have Flashover, which is new. Conflagrate deals 10% increased damage and grants an additional charge of Backdraft. And then Eradication. Eradication did get nerfed. It was also moved up a tier. So Chaos Bolt increases the damage you deal to the target by 10% for 7 seconds on live. that is 15%. And then Soulfire is returning, so this was actually removed in Legion. 20-second cooldown, burns the enemy's soul, dealing fire damage. Cooldown is reduced by 2 seconds for every soul shard you spend, and it generates 4 soul shard fragments. So that's nice. Reverse entropy is completely changed. Your spells have a chance to grant you 15% haste for 8 seconds. So that's really nice. Internal combustion is new. Chaos Bolt consumes up to 5 seconds of Immolate's damage overtime effect on your target, instantly dealing that much damage. And then Shadow Burn was just moved down a tier, and its cooldown is now a strict 12 seconds. Before it was based off your haste, now it's just straight 12 seconds. And for the most part, it has been changed. So it blasts targets for some Shadow Flame damage. That part is unchanged, I believe. If the target dies within 5 seconds and yields experience or honor, Shadowburn's cooldown is reset. It generates 3 soul shard fragments, and it still has 2 charges. So for the next tier, Demon Skin, Burning Rush, Dark Pact. These should all look familiar because these are all in the level 75 tier, but they were just moved up to the level 45 tier. And some of them have been changed slightly. So Demon Skin did get a nerf. Your Soul Leech absorption now passively recharges at a rate of 0.5% of maximum health every 1 second. On live, that's 1%. So a bit of a nerf there. And may now absorb up to 15% of maximum health. On live, that's 20%. Burning Rush did not get changed at all. You still use it to increase your movement speed by 50%, but it hurts you for 4% of your health every second, and you cannot be slowed below normal running speed. Dark Pact did get a nerf, so you now sacrifice 20%, still 1 minute cooldown. You now sacrifice 20% of your current health to shield you. On live, it was, 20% of your demon's health, which now it's 20% of your health, which is on live if you don't have demon out. But anyways, it puts a shield in you for 250% of the sacrificed health, which on live, that's 400%. So it now uses up your health and gives you less of a shield. Then for the level 65 tier, Inferno, I believe, is new. There used to be a talent called Inferno, which was removed in Mist, but I don't believe that did the same thing as this one. So it's a passive. Rain of Fire damage has a 20% chance to generate a soul shard fragment. So there's that. Fire and Brimstone was changed. Passive. Incinerate now also hits all damage near your target for 40% damage and generates 1 soul shard fragment for each additional enemy hit. So I believe that last part is new. And then Cataclysm is not changed at all. Still a 30-second cooldown. Calls forth Cataclysm at the target's location, dealing some Shadow Flame damage to all enemies within 8 yards, afflicting them with Immolate. And there's that. Level 75 tier. Dark Fury is new because Shadow Fury is baseline, so this reduces the cooldown of Shadow Fury by 15 seconds, bringing it down to a 45-second cooldown. Mortal Coil is not changed at all. Still a 45-second cooldown. You use it on targets. They get feared for 3 seconds, and it heals you for 20% of your maximum health. And then Demonic Circle is of course not changed. You can put a Demonic Circle on the ground, use it again, and teleport to that location. The level 90 tier, Roaring Blaze, is new. So Conflagrate burns the target for an additional some fire damage over 6 seconds. Supremacy has been changed. So while you have an Infernal active, every soul shard you spend increases the damage of your Chaos Bolt by 8%. And then Grimoire of Sacrifice, the only change to it is, well, you still sacrifice your Demon Pet for more power, gaining a command demon ability, and causing your spells to sometimes also deal some additional shadow damage. That's the same as on live, except in BFA it will no longer damage enemies within an 8-yard radius of your current target. So it no longer does like passive AoE damage. And then the final tier, Soul Conduit, is unchanged. Still passive, every soul shard you spend has a 15% chance to be refunded. Channel Demon Flame is unchanged. Its cooldown still based off your haste. Launches 15 bolts of Fellfire over some amount of seconds at a random target location affected by your Immolate within 40 yards. Each of your bolts deal fire damage to the targets, and then less fire damage to nearby enemies. And then Dark Soul Instability is returning. So this was actually removed in Legion, and it does the same thing from what before it was removed. 2-minute cooldown, infuses your soul with unstable power, increasing your critical strike chance by 30% for 20 seconds. And now here we have the PvP talent. If you did not watch my video going over how PvP talents work, this is how it goes. You have these 4 bubbles here. This top bubble is the same for all classes and all specs. You get to pick between Relentless, Adaptation, and Gladiator's Medallion. These are all on the first tier on live. They all do the exact same thing, but you just get to pick between one of them. These next 3 bubbles are a giant pool of your already existing PvP talents. So you get to pick between any of these 3. So as you see, it's no longer on a tier system. So like 3 you might really like on live that are on the same tier, you can pick them all in BFA if you'd like. Now as far as changes go to these, most of them have not been changed. There's I think like a few of them that have been changed. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read the names, mouse over them. If you want to know what they do, you can look at your destruction lock, or you can pause the video since I will be mousing over them. For the, I think that it's like 5 total. For the 5 total that have slight changes to them, I will talk about what those changes are. So here we have Focus Chaos, then Fell Fissure. The only change to Fell Fissure is it will reduce the healing received on target by 25% of all targets that are hit by the fissure, whereas on live that's 50%. So a slight nerf there. Cremation. The only changes to Cremation is that Incinerate will not apply Immolate, and then Conflagrate deals up to an additional 3% of the target's maximum health and fire damage, whereas on live that's 2%. Then there's Entrenched in Flame, Bane of Havoc, Curse of Fragility. The only change to Curse of Fragility is it will reduce the target's maximum health by up to 15% for 10 seconds, whereas on live that is 20%. Then there's Curse of Tongues, Curse of Weakness, Nether Ward, and then the only change to Nether Ward is it will last on you for 3 seconds, reflecting all harmful spells cast on you, whereas on live that's 5 seconds. And then Essence Drain, and then Casting Circle. And the changes to Casting Circle is its cooldown is being increased from 30 seconds to 1 minute. It will last on the ground for 8 seconds, down from 10 seconds. And instead of giving you like, what is it, 70% reduction to silences and interrupts or whatever, it will now make you completely immune to all silences and interrupts for the 8 seconds it's on the ground. But if you learn this ability, meaning you have War Mode on and then you leave Stormwind or Orgrimmar, Unending Resolve will no longer grant you its immunity to silences and interrupts. So there is that. And those are all of the PvE talents, as well as all of the normal talents. And there you have it, everything coming in Battle for Azeroth for the Destruction Warlocks. All these changes will be going into effect when 8.0.1 comes out, which is the pre-patch to Battle for Azeroth, and that's most likely coming like July 10th or 17th. So what you see in this video is a pretty good representation of the final product. But it is a beta, so everything is still subject to change, of course. And I'm curious as to what you guys think. Do you like these changes or do you hate them? You can let me know in the comments below, but if you guys like this video, you can leave a like on it. You can sub to the channel for more videos like this, and I'll see you guys in the next video.